But now we want to go to the United Nations, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has just addressed the General Assembly. His speech comes one day after President Donald Trump said Ukraine can win back any land lost to Russia's invasion. Zelenskyy said stopping Russia's aggression now would secure the future for all of Europe. Listen.
Stopping this war now, and with it, the global arms race, is cheaper than building underground kindergartens or massive bunkers for critical infrastructure later. Stopping Putin now is cheaper than trying to protect every port and every ship from terrorists with sea drones. Stopping Russia now is cheaper than wondering who will be the first to create a simple drone carrying a nuclear warhead. So we must use everything we have together to force the aggressor to stop. And only then do we have a real chance that this arms race will not end in catastrophe for all of us.
And we continue our coverage with CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis at the United Nations. Olivia, thank you for making time for us today. What are your takeaways from President Zelenskyy's address?
Sure, Mugo. Well, President Zelenskyy did express appreciation again for President Trump's apparent shift in perspective on this war. But otherwise, as you heard a little bit there, painted a very bleak picture of a world where institutions are broken and helpless in protecting the ones who need the most help, pointing to the suffering of citizens in Gaza, in Syria, in Sudan, saying that international law doesn't work unless you have powerful friends. There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons, and making sort of a business case, as you heard there, saying it's cheaper to stop Russia now than to wait for them to target the next thing, warning that Russia was continuing this war by expanding it. We, of course, know that there's been a series of incursions into NATO airspace that the NATO alliance has responded to. The U.S. response has been, for its own part, rather muted. So it remains to be seen whether this shift in President Trump's rhetoric is a permanent one, or is it a passing provocation of President Putin? Does it manifest itself into more punitive measures against Russia, working alongside Europe in order to introduce those? The Kremlin, we know, has brushed off most of what President Trump said yesterday, in particular the paper tiger accusation. Today, the Kremlin spokesperson said Russia is not a paper tiger, we are a real bear. So continuing sort of a zoological trope. Later today, in a matter of minutes actually, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to meet with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. No shortage of topics for them to address between themselves.
And it's interesting the point you made there earlier, because it does seem as if the president's stance on this war changes depending on who we most recently spoke with. Olivia, after his address to the UN just yesterday, President Trump, he went on social media to say, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win back all of Ukraine back in its original form. So what did Zelenskyy have to say about that today?
Sure. Well, he expressed some amount of surprise, even just yesterday, a mild amount of surprise, saying that he didn't quite expect the president to say that, but he was grateful that the president had good information. He called him a potential game changer in the course of this war. So he has been telling reporters here that he is glad, essentially, that the president has been briefed in the way that he has been, so that he sees things in the same way that Ukraine does. And as we've been talking about, the president had recently shifted his focus to Europe, saying that Europe needs to stop its dependence on Russian energy imports. It needs to cut those off 100%. We know the bloc has taken those down in a significant way, but there are outliers like Slovakia and Hungary that are still heavily dependent on Russian oil purchases. The president was also asked about that yesterday, whether he had had any interaction with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Yesterday he said he had not, but that he intends to have a phone call with him to see if he can't persuade him to curb those purchases of Russian oil.
Okay, Olivia Gazis is live at the United Nations for us today. Thank you.